Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event, Achieving NDC Commitments Through Transforming Agri-Food Systems. It's organized by FAO in partnership with the Institute for Climate Impact Research, the University of Kassel, the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture, GACSA, the Platform for Latin America and the Caribbean for Climate Action in Agriculture, PLACA, the United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification, the UNCCD, and the Adaptation Fund. I am Eduardo Mansur. I'm the Director of the Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment and FAO, and I'm speaking to you live from COP26 in Glasgow, and I have the honor to be your moderator in this session. Thank you. This COP is particularly important to discuss the NDC's achievement, as all countries were required to submit their new and updated NDCs ahead of this COP. So by November 3rd, 119 countries have submitted the new NDC targets. However, the combined NDCs of all the parties are not enough yet to meet the 1.5 degrees target. Even if you combine all the current plans and promises contained in the NDCs, they would lead to a global temperature increase of 2.7. That's what the Secretary of the Convention told us in the opening of COP26 here in Glasgow. Agri-food systems can take a good part of the responsibilities, but also part of the solutions to address the climate crisis. The sectors related to agri-food systems are responsible for 21 to 37% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, the agriculture sector is covered in 87% of the NDCs. At this crucial moment and the increasing momentum for agri-food systems, it's great to have this event to provide insights on how we from the agri-food systems sector can contribute to achieve the NDCs. And before kicking off this session, allow me to outline the overall shape of the event today. This is only a 1 hour session. We are going to be sharp on time. And we have different excellent panelists to do the opening remarks, the keynote speech, a roundtable. And we would like also to hear from you. Please feel free to use the chat whenever you want. It's my honor to invite His Excellency Hans Hoogeveen to open the session. Hans Hoogeveen is the co-chair of the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture. And he was elected recently the independent chairperson of the Council of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations last June. He's the former permanent representative of Netherlands to FAO. Hans Hoogeveen is acknowledged as a consummate professional and a man of agriculture of its most degree. Ambassador, it's my honor to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. And ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be with you, be it virtually, to your important event at COP26 titled Achieving NDC Commitments Through Transforming Agri-Food Systems. And indeed, we need transformative change. While countries recover from severe impacts by the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change impacts continue posing an existential threat to humanity. It's clearly stated by the World Economic Forum. Prioritizing the climate change agenda, including its fundamental instruments such as the NDCs, carries crucial importance at this COP to achieve the global goals set forward in, of course, the Agenda 2030, the SDGs, and the Paris Agreement. And I think this COP has to be a moment of change, also changing to action on the ground. And of course, climate change is one of the biggest challenges we are facing. But let's not forget, besides climate change, hunger is the second biggest challenge we face today. Our world is changing rapidly. We know that people are now going for a holiday into space, and innovations spring up daily like seedlings in spring. But this expansion is not without consequences. It's a moral outcry that despite our progress, more than 800 million people are living in hunger. 3 billion people do not have access to safe, affordable, and nutritious food. And 2 billion people suffer from obesity. And we know that the dots are not connecting, because we also know that we are losing 1/3 of our yearly produced food every year. And that's, when you look to in an economic way, it's $1 trillion. Look what you can do with these investments of $1 trillion for climate change and sustainable food systems. And we know that we can produce more food than ever, but biodiversity and the amounts of arable land are decreasing. And the COVID-19 has plunged the world into the biggest crisis of recent history. Not without standing our technologies, we have seen that a simple or perhaps complex virus can derail our supply chains. To speak bluntly, the shortcomings of our food system and our global food systems have been laid bare. We need transformative change, and we need it now. We need it urgently. Transformative change via transformative actions. There are no excuses anymore for not acting. And we all know that sustainable agriculture food systems are and should be part of the solution, as Eduardo already said. About 21 to 37% of the greenhouse emissions come from agriculture. So agriculture is rightfully so the change we need. And by transforming our agri-food systems, we can turn over this global challenge. We only have to reorganize ourselves, I think, to become more flexible, to forget about the old patterns of the system, and we should look to more creative, innovative approaches to see how we can turn over our food systems in a more sustainable way. And as I said, we need actions. And of course, it's nice to speak about actions, but I can already show to you that we have game changers. We are developing in this moment 3 game changers in which FAO and to a certain extent GAXA are involved. First, FAO and the World Bank are building a global food loss and food waste facility. And this facility should promote investments of the private sector at national country level to avoid food systems, for example, via storage capacity, better packaging methods, which can decline the food losses in those countries. And with that, we can achieve a reduction of 10% of greenhouse emissions in the near future, 10% to grab. A second new development is the idea to develop a global framework for carbon credit systems for farmers. We already have it for the industry, but think what a game changer it would be if we can give farmers financial means to change their agriculture practices in climate smart agriculture practices, for example, via carbon storage or via agroforestry. Think about the game changer. And we are starting to build that kind of global framework. And last but not least, I think we need the innovations, we need the technologies, but they have to be available for the farmers. And at this moment, we see often that they are not affordable, not accessible, or not implementable by the smaller farmers. And that's why we are now working on the development of national and local agri-tech competence centers at the national scale. If we can create those centers at the national or local level, we can give that access to the smaller farmers. So it is more than only from ambition to action. It's acting together for the planet, acting with actions to be developed as from now at COP26. And GAXA, the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture, is a multi-stakeholder platform with an extensive membership ranging from government organizations to NGOs, farmers, private sector organizations, university, academia, amongst others. And since the inception of the GAXA in 2014 at the UN summit, we are building awareness. We are building the ambition to transform into action. And the Alliance is now developing and presenting a new strategy which will focus on sustainable and equitable increases of agricultural productivity and incomes in a sustainable way, also for smaller farmers, not only for the bigger farms, but for smaller farmers as well, giving them access to technology, building greater resilience of food systems and farming livelihoods via, for example, the facility and the carbon credit system. And last but not least, reduction and removal of greenhouses, how to be done via climate smart practices. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, to roll up our sleeves, to get into the action mood, and then we know that we can be successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your keynote remarks and for highlighting the importance of action now. This is COP26. It's 27 hours of dialogue. We are finally with agriculture and food systems in the climate dialogue. The time is now. And I'm honored to inform you that we have a video message from Her Excellency, the Maria Emilia Undurraga Marimon, who serves as the Minister of Agriculture of Chile. Doña Maria Undurraga is an agriculture engineer, and she has a master in sociology from the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile and a master in public policy from the Duke University in the United States. I would like you to join me in listening to and seeing the video message of Her Excellency, the Minister of Agriculture of Chile.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank FAO for the invitation to participate in this event within the framework of COP26. It is a great honor to share with you the progress that Chile has made related to food systems during Chilean presidency of COP25 and the future challenges to be addressed at COP26. By 2050, it is projected that there will be about 9.7 billion people in the world, which implies that the demand for food and forest products will increase by more than 50%. Today, FAO estimates nearly 800 million people suffering from hunger and almost 700 million people from obesity. We need to talk also about food security. Global food security requires the production of more food for the growing population, adapting to climate change, promoting local production, and also an open and transparent international trade. We are facing a scenario of climate change with an extremely vulnerable agri-food sector that has great challenges for adaptation and contribution to mitigation. Food is essential for the development, health, and welfare of the people, and food systems are one of the most important ways to defeat poverty and hunger in the world. Besides, food systems are the key for local development, keepers of local tradition and landscapes, and important stakeholders to face adaptation and mitigation. We have the challenge of feeding a global growing population in a sustainable environment, economically efficient and socially responsible manner, with less water, less soil, but with more technology. We must remember that food systems are the main actors in the quality of life in rural areas. With the comprehensive approach, we must move toward more sustainable, efficient, and innovative food chain, improving international collaborations between public and private sector, civil society, and science. Considering this context and the challenge we have to face, the Ministry of Agriculture has defined 5 lines of work. We address the challenge in social, environmental, and economic pillar of sustainability with a territorial perspective. We also have a work stream on sustainable production, climate change, and water, in which we have been working. When we talk about climate change, Chile is not a major greenhouse gas emitting country. Our emissions only represent 0.26% of global emissions. Additionally, agriculture represents 11% of Chile's emissions. Specifically, in agriculture, 40% of the emissions corresponds to enteric fermentation of ruminants, 38% correspond to agricultural soils, and 17% to manure management. For COP25, we proposed 6 major goals, which include updating the NDCs, coordinating the transfer of information among the countries of the region, a long-term climate strategy, an adaptation plan, and a sustainable strategy for agri-food systems. I want to highlight the advances that we have achieved on sustainable production in food systems. This August, we launched the Agri-Food Sustainability Strategy towards 2030, which defines the priorities for the public and the private sector's actions for the next 8 years, with a focus on the articulation of the provision of public programs and policies to favor the advancement of the private sector in the area of sustainability, addressing the environmental, social, and economic aspect of development. An example of this is the program called Chile Origen Consciente, which seeks to promote the adoption of the sustainable production practice through the implementation of clean production agreements with the private sector. In 2020, the goals of the NDC that had been committed in Paris Agreement were increased. In this new version of the NDC, the sector committed to the sustainable management and recovery of 200,000 hectares of native forest. Also, the reforestation of 200,000 hectares, and also reducing emissions from the forest sector by 25% due to the degradation and deforestation of native forests by 2030. Another commitment was the development of a national landscape scale restoration plan, committing the restoration of 1 million hectares of landscapes by 2030. It should be noted that to accomplish this commitment, Chile currently has 3 sectorial instruments, which are the Más Bosques project, the Reactivation Program, and the Native Forest Law. Regarding the long-term climate strategy that Chile will present at COP26, the agriculture sector has committed to goals related to the development of capacities research, development, and rural extensions in matters of climate actions, measures for adaptations, and climate change mitigation, and institutional strengthening. It should be noted that Chile made an important effort to increase the ambition of these goals, particularly regarding climate change mitigation by agriculture, Objective 2, where it commits to 17 goals. About the challenges that we see at COP26 for agriculture, we can mention different levels of challenges. Globally, we believe it is essential to establish a new work plan for agriculture that continue Coronaria. At the regional level, PLACA's work should be continued to continue progress towards sustainable, resilient, and low-carbon agriculture system in Latin America's countries throughout climate actions. And at the national level, the agriculture sector is challenged with the implementation of the NDC, the long-term climate change strategy, and the updating of the sectorial adaptation plan. We can mention that Chile is committed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and for this there are a series of intermediate steps, such as the update of the NDC that was carried out last year, the current processing of the framework law on climate change, and compliance with the NDC by 2030. The agriculture sector and the Ministry of Agriculture are committed to all these initiatives. Finally, I would like to thank again FAO for the invitation. I hope that what we presented will be useful for the conversation that follows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias a la señora ministra for the video message and for Chile to host the presidents until this COP and to put up the PLACA, the Latin American Platform for Agriculture, that is now a landmark in the work on agri-food systems for climate change. You may see here in my background, I removed the Zoom cover because there was too much light, but you see a bit of the vibe of the COP26 from Glasgow, where we are speaking now. The time is now for us to move to the roundtables for some presentations on how we can put agri-food systems as part of the solution. We have colleagues that are going to introduce the topic to us. We have the panelists that are going to discuss with us now. I have to introduce you 5 panelists, and because of the short of time, we have only 40 minutes to go. I would like you to be very precise and short as possible in your presentations. Our first speaker in the panel, let me mention them, then I'll give a bit more detail when they speak. We have my colleague Badi Besbes from FAO. We have Dr. Christophe Gournaud from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research from the University of Kassel. We have Madame Cecilia Jones, Ministry of Agriculture of Uruguay. We have my dear colleague and friend Daniel Segai from the UNCCD Secretariat in Bonn. And we have Madame Caroline King Okumu from the Border Institute. I am pleased to start immediately, without further ado, with Badi Besbes as the first panelist who will kick off the segment of this roundtable, talking to us about pastoralism and how it can contribute to national determined contributions. Badi is a senior officer. He's head of the Animal Production Genetics Unit in our FAO Animal Production and Health Division, and he's also the secretary of the Subcommittee on Livestock under the FAO Committee on Agriculture, COAG. Badi has a master's degree in animal science and a PhD in animal genetics. He works on poverty-focused livestock sector development, focused on small-scale livestock production and pastoralism. Badi, great honor to have you here. The floor is yours, the shortest possible for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Excellencies, distinguished panelists and participants, good afternoon. I would like also to thank the organizers for the invitation to participate in this event and share with you some evidence on pastoralism, which I hope will help explore options for engaging in climate action, biodiversity, and sustainable food systems. In this regard, FAO just published a reference document entitled Pastoralism, Making Variability Work, which promotes mobile pastoralism as a food system, offering valuable lessons for climate action and farming with nature. Next slide, please. So this evidence-based document gives 3 main messages, which I will develop in the following slides. First, pastoralism is an innovative system as it's specialized in taking advantage of variability. Second, pastoralism is a specific approach to produce food with livestock or from livestock. And third, pastoralism is a system that provides many benefits. Next slide, please. Pastoral systems are emblematic of farming with nature. They have evolved to function with the natural environment and therefore with variability. Pastoralists make use of the variability of resources by moving with their herds to the right place at the right time. Their approach to herd management, for example, by mixing species and using local breeds, promotes biodiversity. And by sharing access to resources, they use flexible forms of land tenure in interaction with seasonal cropping systems. So in doing so, pastoralism contributes to the sustainable development goals in a climate change scenario that is characterized by increased variability. Next slide, please. Pastoralism is a sustainable livestock system that would inspire lessons for considering agriculture and food system in relation to resilience and climate change. Pastoral systems have been effective in producing food with the natural environment rather than against it, or rather than trying to control it. If we look at it from this angle, pastoralism is innovative and compatible with modernization. Next slide, please. So pastoralism is a system that provides many benefits, including adaptation to and mitigation to climate change, creation of economic values and employment, provision of food security and nutrition, water efficiency, landscape functionality, biodiversity conservation, and because all of this, pastoralism is aligned with the transition to a green economy. I hope I will have a chance to come on these points. Next slide, please. FAO has endorsed this innovative narrative on pastoralism and brought the proposal for the observance of the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralism in 2026 to the UN General Assembly for its adoption. In addition to that, the organization is committed to improve the understanding of pastoral systems and integrating them more effectively into its technical and policy programs. It's also committed to support its members to develop their policies and programs related to pastoralism and rangeland, and committed to support pastoralist mobility by informing policy dialogue. I would like to conclude this short intervention by introducing the animated video, Pastoralism is the Future. This video was developed by CELEP. CELEP is the Coalition of European Lobbies for Eastern African Pastoralism. It was developed as part of their activities to promote the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralism. This video nicely illustrates the point I just raised, and it's available in 50 languages. Can you please put the video on? Thank you.
On about 40% of land on Earth, rainfall is highly unpredictable. Where and when crops and pasture will be able to grow can change from one year to the next. Food production systems that depend on predictability struggle to control these natural environments, even with costly investments. This option was never truly sustainable, and with global climate change is meeting its limits. But depending on predictability is a choice. It does not need to be that way. Highly variable natural environments actually offer opportunities for food production when producers specialize in being in the right place at the right time. Pastoralists are such producers. They specialize in making sustainable use of highly variable environments to produce food. By managing their animals' grazing itineraries to match the changing opportunities in their landscape, they can keep their herds in a relatively stable condition. They track beneficial combinations of forage plants and highest concentrations of nutrients. This keeps their animals on the best possible diet that only a variable landscape can offer. When they have the freedom to move to the right place at the right time, pastoralists make sustainable use of the natural environment and produce organically for domestic markets and export. Conventional food production systems that choose to depend on predictability need to combat variability to control the natural environment. With climate change, the natural environment is becoming even more variable everywhere. This is now our common future. If we learn from pastoralists, environmental variability can become an asset. They are walking the path to sustainable food production systems in the face of climate change. By sustainably turning environmental variability into food, pastoralists are already in the future.
Thank you very much, Buddy, for excellent presentation and video, which is available for participants. It's now my pleasure to continue this session with two speakers from the segment, Dr. Christophe Gournod from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research of the University of Kassel, and Madame Cecilia Jones from the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries of Uruguay. FAO works with partners, member countries, and other stakeholders. That includes, of course, the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, for the development of the damage and loss methodology to attribute loss and damage in agriculture to anthropogenic climate change. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Gournod, who's the leader of the working group on adaptation and agricultural systems at the Potsdam University Institute for, at the PIC, it's easier to say this, Christophe, if I may. And he's also the chair of the Department of Agro-Ecosystem Analysis and Modeling at the University of Kassel. So his research aims to improve food security and resilience in agricultural systems, evaluates agricultural adaptation in face of climate change. You have the floor, Dr. Gournod. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for this kind introduction. And today it's a pleasure to introduce you the attributing losses and damages in the agriculture caused by extreme weather events to anthropogenic climate change. Yeah, I was already introduced you. Go to the next slide, please. So the aim of my talk is to talk on how could we attribute climate change impacts in agriculture to support NDC, NAP, and the WIM mechanism. And I think it's quite important that we have a lot of events going on. For instance, if we now look at the cases for Madagascar, where we see extreme poverty, extreme food insecurity caused by food shortages, we have to make sure to understand these shortages and these losses better and to attribute them and link them to climate change whenever possible. So, and this is also where our work starts, so linking and quantifying anthropogenic climate change impacts with observed weather events and linking this to the agriculture sector. So this is the idea, and this information can then inform adaptation and also mitigation decisions in the agri-food systems. It could provide to the loss and damage process and to the Warsaw International Mechanism. And finally, it could also support legal claims to, for crop loss compensations. Next slide, please. And I guess we have to understand this chain better. So from anthropogenic climate change to the weather signal, to crop yield signal, to food security. And I guess this is so crucial to understand this chain and to understand, okay, which part of the losses, which part of the variability is actually attributable to losses caused by anthropogenic forcing. And I think this is where the work starts. And here we have two figures from the newest IPCC report. On the top, you can see the attribution of climate change to extreme temperature events, marked here with the reddish colors. And whenever this is possible, so this should be a world map. And whenever it is possible, it is marked in reddish colors. or bluish, but there are no bluish colors with a decrease. The reddish color means an increase. And this works quite well. But if we go one on the figure below, we see this for drought, and we see already that it seems to be much more difficult to attribute an effect of droughts to anthropogenic climate forcing and climate change. And you see a lot of gray and dashed colors, which means we have no clear signal or we don't have enough data to give this information. And I think we are still here at the circle or at the very left, where you see this is the effect from anthropogenic climate change to weather variability. But what we have to do is to translate this to crop yield signals, and then we also have to translate this to food security and food availability. Next slide, please. And I guess here our work starts. So what we did is extracting the effect of climate change from observed weather data, from past weather data, which you can see here with the orange and bluish lines. So this is one point, the effect of the observed weather data, and we try to exclude the effect of climate change. And this kind of information, these factual and counterfactual runs, then could be used to translate this information into agriculture signals, so signals on how much yields are produced, how much food is produced, and what would this mean with respect to food security. And I guess this is joint work, what we are doing together with colleagues from the FAO and the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, plus the University of Kassel. So this is the work, and I think this is very important to feed this in the processes of loss and damage, and feed this in the processes of the Green Climate Fund and underlying mechanisms. So this is supported by a lot of data, a lot of forcing data from Climate Intercomparison Project, as well as agricultural observation data. Next slide, please. I think we still have some challenges to go. We have to work on limitations which we still have, particular with respect to observed data quality and quantity in many countries, in particular in the countries where we work in the global south. There are a lot of complexities on impacts on crop yields and food security, food insecurity, which are not understood so far. And we have to widen this approach. But in all cases, we have to collaborate more, and the collaboration between international organizations like the FAO and science can provide rapid process and bring this more to the political agenda. And I think with these words, I'm happy for the discussion, and thank you for your attention. Next slide, please. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gournot, for the excellent information. We see that there are challenges ahead, but the progress is very motivating. And let's look at the situation from the countries. We have here Miss Carolina. Let me get her surname correct. Carolina. Pardon. Cecilia. Carolina. Cecilia Jones. Who's an agronomist from the University of Republic of Uruguay and has a Master of Science from Minnesota. She works at the Climate Change and Sustainability in Agriculture and Livestock, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries of Uruguay. Cecilia has participated in preparation of Uruguay's NDCs and the National Climate Change Policy, the NEP for the agriculture sector, and the elaboration of the adaptation goals, including in the first nationally determined contribution of the Paris Agreement. I'm very honored to give you the floor.
Good morning or good afternoon for people. Thank you very much, depending where you are. I'm talking from Uruguay. I was not fortunate enough to go to the COP26. And I've been told that I have 3 minutes for this, so I'm gonna keep it simple. Three, right. So I want to talk about NDC achievements at the national level, and also about the role it has, the integration, regional integration has in this achievement. I'm besides what Eduardo just mentioned, I'm also president of PLACA, of the Plataforma de Acción Climática para Latinoamérica y el Caribe. So this platform, it's today it has 11 members. We had 10 members last week, but we just we have to welcome Colombia also to the platform. We're very happy about that. So what 3 points that I want to make? First, what is the role NDCs in our welfare and in achieving what are the common threats, the global threats, but also the local threats. Uruguay has chosen to include a chapter in adaptation and reducing vulnerability in its NDC. And I want to make a point of how important it is for our countries to contribute to the global threats, but also never forget about the environmental degradation, ecosystem integrity, and reducing climate vulnerability as core actions at the national level. Some of the things that were mentioned about risk reduction and reducing loss and damage talk about exactly what I'm mentioning. We need to reach a balance between what is in my country and in many countries of the region of Latin America and the Caribbean of what are the local threats and our contribution to the global challenge. That's one point. Second point I want to make is what is the key importance of regional platforms in having these discussions or reinforcing the concept of that one size does not fit all. There's a need for enabling environments for deploying actions that effectively contribute to mitigation goals and also contribute to our adaptation challenges in our region. I think events like this and the contribution that FAO does and platforms like AXA and PLACA are important for the conversation. But in the end, the creating an enabling environment, facilitating finance and for action at the local level, I think in the end, that's where we need to be geared to. I'm welcome to continue the discussion after the panel. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Cecilia. Gracias por juntar con nosotros desde Uruguay. Many thanks for being with us from Montevideo. I am happy to inform you that the 11 partners on PLACA can be grown soon to 12 because yesterday in a meeting with the Minister of Environment of Ecuador, we introduced to him the topic. He knew it already and he's considering very positively the possibility of Ecuador becoming the 12th member of the platform. So very happy to pass to you this information from Glasgow. And to move to a third session, we have always running out of time, so we are right to be precise. But we have two colleagues here that I would like to introduce to you. Daniel Tsegai. Daniel is from the UNCCD Secretariat, the Convention on Combating Desertification, and Caroline Kingo-Kumo from the Border Institute. Daniel leads the Drought and Water Scarcity portfolio of the convention and coordinates the Global Intergovernmental Working Group on Drought. And before joining UNCCD, Dr. Tsegai was an academic officer at the UNU, the United Nations University, and he was also a lecturer as a senior researcher at the University of Bonn. So we are in very good hands with my dear colleague, Daniel Tsegai, to address some of the questions that I'm going to be posing to you and to Carolina. Carolina is very interested in adaptation to climate change. We continue here in the COP, Carolina, saying that this is the big absent of the COP. We don't discuss adaptation sufficiently. And then after saying this statement, we move to mitigation and don't discuss adaptation anymore. So it's not working. We have to bring adaptation to the table. And I'm happy to have you here to look into climate change in dry lands, risks of drought. I understand you work for an NGO in Africa. You hold a doctoral degree and you are a visiting fellow of the University of Southampton, leading a range of experts, advisory and knowledge building processes, also for the UNFCCC, the CCD, FAO, and others. Common question for both of you, and then I will give you 1 minute answer, if you can. We are all aware of the devastating effects of droughts, which often result in severe humanitarian and economic damage. can drought threats be turned into opportunities and drought events from disasters into development success stories? Am I asking too much? And what actions we have to embrace in order to not be afraid of droughts, but face them and address them? Let's start with Daniel. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Good to see you. Good to be here. Also, I'm honored to present about the most important topics that you have mentioned. Yes, we need to act on drought, and we need to turn the challenge of drought into an opportunity. One of the things that we have been consistently communicating with many organizations, including FAO, WMO, EACCD, Global Water Partnership, and many other centers, is that we need to be proactive in terms of drought management. We cannot wait for a drought to strike and then act. It is already too late and too little. So we need to work on being more prepared. That means also we need to have an established early warning and monitoring systems. It's not only about predicting and forecasting drought, it's also about risk analysis. We need to analyze the risk. We need to communicate the information to the end users, the farmers, the beneficiaries of the local information, the early warning information system. The other pillar that we have always been discussing with countries is that we need to also have a drought vulnerability assessment. Who is going to be vulnerable and why? We need to have a drought risk profile for countries well ahead of before drought strikes. The other thing is we need to also come up with a drought risk mitigation measure that is context specific. Cecilia was talking about no one size fits all. Yes, so we need to have a context specific drought risk mitigation measure, and countries need to be able to identify their resources, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, what are their capacities in terms of biological, water, and many other resources. So we need to really act on this, and there are a number of activities that we need to do, but I think in the 1 minute, let me leave it here and leave the rest probably to my dear colleague, Caroline.
Thank you, Danielle. Over to you, Caroline. Same question.
Okay, so building on what Daniel has been saying, we know that drought is not a new phenomenon. We have been facing droughts for many centuries, and there is a huge body of experience that has been accumulated in learning how to cope with droughts, particularly amongst certain communities. So we had a fantastic presentation from Berdi Besbes showing us how pastoralists use their knowledge to survive droughts. And each time they do that, that is a huge success. But our problem as an international community is that we don't do a very good job yet at capturing the extent to which there are successes and failures in surviving drought. So this is now our objective, to recognize the tremendous successes and build on those and learn from them. And this is how we will turn this challenge into an opportunity for increased success in the future.
Let me come back then again to you, because you raise our both of you, but especially to you, Caroline. So there is way of working with drought to invest in disaster risk management, to prepare to face droughts. As you said, it's not a phenomenon that didn't occur, but climate change puts it more frequent, more severe. Now, what would be the most cost-effective way of investing, of bringing the climate financing to address drought? Is my question clear, Caroline?
It's a really clear question. It's everybody's question, and it's very, very important, especially when we know that the cost of not investing is what Christoph has been telling us about loss and damage. So we need to invest in a timely and effective way that will avoid those losses and damages. And that means that a relatively small investment ahead of time can avoid a major long-term cost and process of loss and damage. So the first thing that we want to emphasize in this discussion is the proactive approach of investing ahead of the problem rather than waiting and reacting when we already have a severe drought and potentially a humanitarian disaster. We need to be proactive. And the other thing that we need to be aware of for cost-effective investments is that some investments will bring benefit whether or not there is a drought and regardless of the length and severity of that drought. These are, you can call them low-hanging fruit or no-brain solution or all of these other things, but essentially they are the ones where it makes sense and it is cost-effective to invest. And many of those are in the areas of sustainable land and water management, where we know that if we invest in supporting vulnerable people and their strategies for coping with drought and drought risk, there will be a benefit, no matter what the length of the drought or the unpredictable climate condition may bring. That's my answer. I'll hand back to Daniel.
Excellent. Yes. Yes, no, but from Daniel, I would like to tease him a bit more because I know that he can guide us on this. From what Carolina said, I think it's pretty clear on the need of investment. And Daniel, you have been monitoring this for a while now, and we have seen siloed investments in drought, but in certain areas, in certain countries. In your home country, for instance, we have seen a very interesting and important investment on drought preparedness. We've seen that in Kenya, but this becomes exceptions out of the rule. So my question to you, continue on what Carolina put to us, how can we invest in drought preparedness, in drought disaster risk reduction and planning to face the challenge that this climate variation is bringing to us, especially in agriculture, and avoid this siloed distribution, this modeling distribution that's not taking us to a control of the problems coming ahead. Did I make myself clear?
Yes, it was very, very clear. And I think it's a very important question that we have always been struggling in terms of asking. One thing is drought, we have always been saying it is a connector, it is not a sector. We have had a kind of a good session in the World Water Week where we said from a tool set to mindset. So we need to really come up with an understanding of the droughts, the spiraling impact. Traditionally, drought has been affecting agriculture. There is less rainfall, then there is less food security. There is something like a hunger, but it has gone beyond that. The spiraling or the cascading impacts of drought have to be understood. Drought is now about tourism, it is transportation, it is agriculture, it is food, it is energy and health also. So we need to really understand the multi-layered approach and the multi-layered or multifaceted impacts of droughts. That's why this how do you call it, the silo approach does not work. We need to understand drought as a connector, not as a sector. And we need to go for connecting the drought preparedness in a multi-layered approach. First of all, we need to connect at a country level. Countries have to come together. The drought that affects Kenya will not leave Ethiopia or Eritrea or others differently. So it will affect, it knows no political boundaries. And the drought that affects agriculture is going to affect tourism, health, agriculture, and many others. So we need to really make sure that there is some kind of connection among countries. But you asked me a question on how can we go beyond silos in the financing. The funding organizations can also enforce some kind of stronger collaboration among countries. For example, a project proposal, that is written, a funding proposal by many countries in a region. Or it could also be left as a requirement, as a criteria for a multi-sectoral approach, cross-sectoral approach on drought, This way, we can really expand financing opportunities, for example, for increasing on funding cross-border or cross-sectoral initiatives. This could really strengthen and recognize drought not as a sector, but as a connector. And we need to go beyond the agriculture, this limited understanding of drought to food security. The other approach is UN organizations, regional organizations, stakeholders should also come together. We had a UN water initiative, for example, between WMO, FAO, UNCCD, and CBD. We came together to a country to tell them that drought, you cannot talk about only meteorology or agriculture or environment, it is everything. So you need to come together. So the national dialogue in a country is also very much encouraged. So at the UNCCD, we are working on a national drought initiative where the country starts to develop its national drought plan based on principle of risk reduction, but it has to start with a national drought risk management commission that brings together everyone. That's where you can break the silo right at the beginning. Then it becomes a national issue. This is how I would approach it. I hope I have tried to answer your question in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Thank you.
Eduardo, if you would allow me, just 2 little comments.
Yes, please. Very short because you have to move to wrap up, please.
Okay, so
Cecilia.
2 little comments. One is, so Central America has challenges regarding drought, the corredor seco. And I agree with Daniel about the necessary of having a multi-layer approach and risk management, meaning, okay, drought it's a problem, but we have to work on water deficit and temperature challenges also. So there's like steps that need to be taken before the onset of the drought. You know, all countries have different capabilities and challenges, of course, but just a small example I want to say to close. In Uruguay, there was this 1 year that we had a big drought, and national policy was to subsidize feed for cattle. And what was what happened was that farmers did not sell their cattle; they kept it because now they had subsidized feed, and that increased their vulnerability because the measure that they needed for their circumstances was to sell cattle to make it to fit whatever supply they had of food. And so sometimes we need to be careful of what the effect is of measures that are taken, of being conscious that everything is connected, and solving one particular situation should not lead to more vulnerability. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cecilia. I think it complemented very nicely. I have to inform that we have a number of questions that came through the chat, through the participants. And unfortunately, due to the time, we are not going to address them, but most of them are related to the financing. They are going to be addressed here online, but they are going to be addressed by the experts that I will send you directly, including my colleague Maki, who so nicely organized this session from FAO, the colleagues from the European Union. And one new regarding specifically the questions on methane. You know that one of the most exciting things that happened in COP26 was the methane pledge. That can make a difference for all of us because agriculture is responsible for about what, 1/3 of the methane emission, I would say. So maybe the methane pledge will be a game changer for the future for us to address climate and pastoralism. I am very honored to have here with us the chair of the European Commission on high-level expert group to assess the needs for an international platform for food systems science, the IPFSS. That's Mr. Tom Arnold. He's from the Irish government special envoy for food systems, a member of the Champions Network of the UN Food Systems Summit, member of the Global Panel on Agriculture and Food Systems and Nutrition, the GLOPAN, member of the board of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, the GAIN, member of the Malabo Montpellier panel, member. His previous work as the chair of the Irish 2030 Agri-Food Strategy. Tom, I'm sorry if I may. Your CV is too long. We don't have the time. I tell you, we are in excellent hands with Tom and his enormous experience. Also, since he got his degrees in agricultural economics from University College of Dublin and the master's from the Catholic University of Louvain. and the Trinity College in Dublin. And we have to give the time for Tom not to read his CV, but to hear from him what he thought about the session. He will help us in the wrap up. I am extremely excited with it, including to hear from you. And I'm very pleased to give you the floor for the concluding remarks of this discussion that we had on agri-food systems as part of the climate, so the solution to the climate crisis. Dr. Arnold Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Well, it's been a real privilege to sit in to hear this great conversation in the past hour. I think great credit to all of the contributors. I've really learned a great deal from them. I suppose the first thing to say is that we are all now, as a global community, talking about food systems. And this particular session has brought home the fact that food systems are both contributing to and are affected by the impacts of climate change, ecosystem degradation, and biodiversity loss. And how to respond to these challenges is what this session has been about. And we've touched on issues like green and climate resilient approaches, including climate smart agriculture, technological innovation, digital solutions, and indigenous and traditional knowledge. But in the couple of minutes that I have to try to reflect on what I've heard in the past hour, I want to focus on 4 points. The first one is a point made by Cecilia from her vast experience in both Uruguay and the wider Latin American region, that no one size fits all. Very crucial, if you like, simple observation, but profoundly important that we have to take on board national and regional and local realities when we're dealing with devising solutions. The second point is that and this reflects about the whole COP experience, the enormous opportunity there is for learning from each other. And again, learning from each other, both again at local and country and regional level. A third point made by Caroline, which is going to be, I think, fundamental to any vision of the future. And it is the crucial importance of investing in prevention. Prevention is better than cure, it's also cheaper, and it's also more effective. So that is the third point. And then the fourth point, and this specifically with regard to the focus on drought, the point made by Daniel, that what we need for a complex problem like drought is indeed a multi-layer, a cross-sectional approach to think about devising a future. So just in terms of two small final comments then, in terms of, say, working towards practical agendas, Hans mentioned at the very beginning the GASCA, the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture. There is a session coming up on the 18th and 19th of November, which will be really an opportunity to learn from each other, to interact with each other, and to have open discussions. And my final point was I was intrigued by the presentation by the minister from Chile, because she spelled out her national vision, national strategy up to 2030, which is exactly what I've been doing for the last 18 months as well, in helping to devise on a multi-stakeholder basis our Irish national strategy, or Food Vision 2030, the core objective of which is to say that Ireland would like to become a real leader in sustainable food systems over the next decade, and the strategy spells out the policies that should get us there. So, Eduardo, thank you very much. That's what I will conclude on. It's been a real pleasure and privilege to be a participant in this session.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much for all the panelists and speakers. Thank you very much for the audience, for Leonor and Maki for the wonderful background work here from COP26 in Glasgow. I wish you a very good morning, day, afternoon, or evening, and the meeting is concluded. Thank you so much for your participation. Bye-bye for now.